I've always believed in the idea of loyalty. You know, the kind that runs deep, the kind where you can trust someone with your life. I figured that's what I had with Lisa. We've been together for years, and from the very beginning, I knew she was special. The kind of woman who wouldn't stray, who wouldn't betray me. I held on to that belief because without loyalty, what's the point of being with someone, right? I guess you could say I grew up believing that bad women deserved punishment. It sounds harsh, but after seeing people get hurt time and again, I've always felt that disloyalty should have consequences. But deep down, I knew there were still loyal women out there, women like Lisa, or at least I thought so. I dreamed of a life where I could be with a woman who would be by my side until the end, a peaceful, happy life where we grow old together without the worry of betrayal hanging over my head. But lately, I've started feeling this nagging fear. It's ridiculous, isn't it? To be afraid that someone you trust so much might hurt you in the worst possible way. Still, I couldn't shake the fear, the thought of Lisa cheating on me. I couldn't even entertain the idea. I'd tell myself, no, Lisa would never do that. She's different. We have a good life together. We don't have much. And sure, I've never been the most successful guy in terms of money or status, but we've always had each other. That's what mattered. Also, I thought. But the doubts, they started creeping in, you know? Quiet at first, like whispers in the back of my mind, but they grew louder. And with those doubts came a wave of emotions I didn't expect. Empathy, justice, that sense of what's right and wrong. It's like a part of me was preparing for something I didn't want to admit might be real. Was it real though? I couldn't be sure. I had my suspicions, but nothing concrete. And it's not like I was in the best place myself. Struggling financially, feeling like I hadn't achieved enough in life, it messes with you. It messes with your confidence, with your view of yourself. I couldn't even succeed with girls back in the day, so how could I ever hope to keep someone like Lisa? But still, I held on to that belief. Lisa was loyal. She wouldn't betray me. She wouldn't. At first, I brushed it off. It's normal, right? People change. They get busy. They get caught up in work, in life. But Lisa, she started changing in small ways. It wasn't obvious at first. Just little things. Coming home late, more often than usual, saying she was stuck at work. And who was I to question that? She's always been dedicated to her job. But then, it was the phone. Always with her, even when we were just relaxing at home. And I don't mean checking it casually, I mean it became this constant companion. I'd ask her something, and her eyes would flicker to the screen before she'd respond, as if whatever was on there was more important than the conversation we were having. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her texting, and when I'd ask, "Who's that?" she'd say it was a friend from work or something, and that would be that. It's crazy, right? To get suspicious over a phone. But it started to build. I couldn't help it. It's like once those thoughts start creeping in, they don't leave you alone. You try to push them away, but they come back stronger. I told myself it was just me being insecure. I mean, I haven't exactly been killing it in life lately, with money being tight and me feeling stuck. Maybe I was projecting my own worries onto her, but then there were the times she'd go out with friends and not tell me until the last minute. I'm not the type to keep tabs on her or anything, but it just felt off. She'd come home late, sometimes later than she said, and there was always a reason, always an excuse. And every time I'd tell myself, "You're overthinking this. Lisa's not like that." Still, that gnawing feeling didn't go away. It was like something in my gut was telling me that something wasn't right. But how could I bring it up without sounding like some paranoid idiot. I didn't want to be that guy, the guy who accuses his wife just because things feel different, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore it. Then there was that one night. She got home late, later than she had ever been before, and she didn't even bother to make up an excuse this time. Just walked in, kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, and went straight to bed. And I just stood there, wondering if I was losing my mind. The worst part? I couldn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't have proof, just this sick feeling in my chest that something was happening behind my back. So I stayed quiet, trying to push the thoughts away. But every day, it got harder. Every little thing started to seem suspicious. The way she laughed at her phone, the sudden bursts of energy she'd have when she was going out. It all felt like clues, but I didn't know if they were leading anywhere real or if I was just making it all up in my head. I wasn't expecting it. How could I? It was just another regular day. I was out in the yard, trying to keep myself busy, doing anything to distract my mind from the thoughts that had been eating at me. And then, out of nowhere, my neighbor, Steve, walks over. We exchange the usual small talk, nothing out of the ordinary, but then his tone shifts, like he's holding something back. "Hey, John," he says, hesitating for a moment. "I've been meaning to tell you something, but I wasn't sure if I should. It's about Lisa." I felt a knot form in my stomach instantly. My heart started racing. Steve and I weren't exactly close, but we were friendly enough. What could he possibly have to say about Lisa? I tried to play it cool. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew deep down that whatever was coming wasn't good. He glanced around, like he didn't want anyone else to hear, even though it was just the two of us. "Look, man, I don't know how to say this, but I've seen her, Lisa, with another guy, a couple of times now, around town. I didn't think much of it at first, but, well, it didn't seem like they were just friends, if you know what I mean." It hit me like a punch to the gut. My world stopped for a moment. I couldn't even process what he was saying. I just stood there staring at him, trying to make sense of it. "Are you sure?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding shaky, even to me. He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Yeah, man, I'm sure. I didn't want to say anything unless I knew for certain, but look, I figured you deserved to know." I don't know how long I stood there, silent, while Steve awkwardly shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I was frozen, my mind racing with a million thoughts, none of them making any sense. How could this be happening? Lisa, with someone else? Finally, I muttered a thank you, though it felt meaningless. Steve gave me an apologetic look and walked away, leaving me standing there alone, with the weight of his words pressing down on me. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Lisa right then and there, to demand answers, but another part of me didn't want it to be true. I stood there, replaying Steve's words over and over in my head. With another guy, more than once. Suddenly, all those subtle signs, all the late nights, the phone always by her side, the excuses, they all came flooding back. It was like a puzzle I didn't want to solve, but the pieces were falling into place, whether I liked it or not. After Steve's revelation, everything changed. Or maybe everything had already changed, and I was just too blind to see it. I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Every word echoed in my head, refusing to leave me alone. But the worst part, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. Lisa and I had built a life together. Sure, things weren't perfect, but who has a perfect marriage? There were arguments, rough patches, but this felt unreal. I kept asking myself, what if Steve was wrong? What if it was just a misunderstanding? But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, the nagging doubt wouldn't let go. I'd find myself analyzing every little thing, replaying moments in my head like I was searching for clues I'd missed. That time she said she was working late. Did her voice sound different? Was she avoiding eye contact? Or that weekend she went out with her friends? Was she really with them? Or was it someone else? The questions ate away at me, turning even the most innocent memories into something suspicious. It was driving me crazy. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman I'd known for years, but now I was questioning everything. Was she the same person I'd fallen in love with? Or had she changed, slowly, without me even noticing? I started watching her more closely, trying to read between the lines of every conversation, every gesture. But the more I watched, the less I trusted what I saw. And then came the guilt. What kind of husband was I? Doubting my own wife based on a neighbor's word. I mean, Steve's a decent guy, but still. How could I let someone else's observation tear apart everything I believed in? I hated myself for even thinking she could be unfaithful. I'd look at her and feel this sickening mix of love, doubt, and shame. It was like my heart was at war with my mind. There were moments when I wanted to confront her, to just lay it all out and ask her straight. But every time I thought about it, fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if Steve was wrong? What if I accused her of something she didn't do, and in the process, ruined our marriage for good? The thought of losing her, whether she was guilty or not, terrified me. And then there was the other side of it. What if Steve was right? What if Lisa was seeing someone else? What if all those doubts and suspicions were real? Could I handle the truth if it came to that? Could I really face it? I didn't know. I wasn't sure I had the strength. So I stayed silent, trapped in this spiral of doubt. Every day it got harder to ignore. Every glance she gave me, every casual conversation we had, it all felt like a test. And I was failing. The more I questioned her, the more I questioned myself. Was I being paranoid? Or had I just been blind to the truth all along? I couldn't take it anymore. The doubt was eating me alive. Every day felt like I was drowning in my own thoughts, unable to come up for air. I needed answers. I needed to know if what Steve had said was true, or if I was just losing my mind. So I started looking for clues. Quietly, carefully, like I was playing detective in my own life. It started small. I'd glance at her phone whenever she'd leave it lying around. I wasn't proud of it, but I'd check to see if there were any unusual messages, any names that didn't fit. But Lisa was careful. The phone was always close by, and whenever I'd ask her about it, she'd brush it off like it was no big deal. But it was. At least, to me, it was. Then, there was her schedule. I began to notice little inconsistencies, things that didn't add up. She'd say she was working late, but her stories would shift ever so slightly. One night she'd be at the office. The next, she was meeting a colleague for drinks. I kept track of everything in my head, piecing together fragments that on their own meant nothing. But together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. I even went as far as checking her social media. Not obsessively, just enough to see if anything stood out. Maybe a photo she hadn't mentioned. A comment from someone I didn't recognize. Nothing obvious, of course. Lisa wasn't stupid. But once or twice, I'd notice a new name popping up in the likes or comments. A guy. I couldn't put a face to him, but the fact that she never mentioned him bothered me. It got to the point where I started following her. I know it sounds insane, but I had to know. One night she said she was meeting a friend for dinner. I pretended to be fine with it, kissed her goodbye, and then waited a few minutes before heading out myself. I followed her car, heart pounding, feeling ridiculous, but desperate. She wasn't meeting a friend. Not the one she said anyway. I watched from a distance as she pulled up to a small cafe and met someone. A man. I couldn't make out his face, but I saw enough to know. They didn't touch or do anything inappropriate in public, but the way they sat together, leaning in close, sharing smiles, it was more than enough. Too much. I felt the blood drain from my face. My worst fears were coming true right before my eyes. The pieces were all falling into place. Every late night, every odd excuse, every time she laughed at a message on her phone, it all led to this moment. But even as I stood there, watching them, part of me still clung to hope. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But deep down, I knew. I knew this wasn't just a friendly dinner. I knew I couldn't keep living in denial. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The moment I saw her with him, something snapped inside me. For days after, I wrestled with how to bring it up, how to confront her without everything crumbling around us. But no matter how much I tried to prepare myself, there's no easy way to confront someone you love about something like this. So, I waited. I waited until the moment felt right. Or honestly, until I couldn't take it anymore. She came home one evening, acting like everything was fine, same routine, keys on the table, phone in her hand, smile on her face, and that was the hardest part. The normalcy of it. Like nothing was wrong. Like there wasn't a storm building inside me. I waited until she sat down. And then, with my heart pounding in my chest, I just blurted it out. "Lisa, I need to ask you something." She looked up, surprised, probably sensing the seriousness in my voice. "What's wrong?" she asked, her smile fading. I hesitated, but the words came out before I could stop them. "Are you seeing someone else?" Her face changed instantly. For a second, she looked shocked, almost like she couldn't believe I'd asked that. Then something shifted. Her eyes flickered, and I saw it. The guilt, the hesitation. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. That silence was all I needed to hear. "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I know about him." She blinked, and for a moment, it was like she was trying to figure out how much I knew. She started shaking her head, her voice barely a whisper. "John, it's not what you think." But it was. It was exactly what I thought, and we both knew it. "I saw you," I said, my chest tightening. "I saw you with him." There was no denying it anymore. The color drained from her face, and she sat there, silent, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for some kind of escape. "It's not serious," she finally said, her voice trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." A mistake. That's what she called it. A mistake. My hands were shaking now, my heart racing as I tried to process what she was saying. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, her silence louder than any words she could have spoken. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just some passing fling. This was something deeper, something that had been going on behind my back for who knows how long. All those nights she came home late, all those excuses, all the lies. It all came crashing down around me. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you." But she did. She hurt me in the worst possible way. I could feel the pain rising in my chest, like something was breaking apart inside me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but all I could do was sit there, frozen, as the woman I thought I knew admitted to betraying me. "I thought we were happy," I said, my voice barely audible. She started crying then, her hands shaking as she reached out for me, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to understand how we'd gotten here, how everything I believed in, everything I thought we had fallen apart so quickly. "I don't know what to say," she sobbed. "It was a mistake. I'll end it, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." But the damage was done. The trust was gone. And no amount of promises could change that. After that night, everything felt different. The house, the conversations, the way I saw myself, it was all shattered. I tried to keep things together, tried to act like I was holding up, but inside, I was a wreck. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling less of a man, less of a person, just less in every way. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, though that was unbearable on its own. It was the way it made me question everything about myself. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? I wondered if I hadn't been enough, if I wasn't successful enough, attractive enough, or interesting enough to keep her happy. Was it my fault? Had I driven her away by not being good enough? It's strange how something like this can strip away all the confidence you thought you had. I started doubting everything: my worth, my ability to trust people, even my own judgment. How had I been so blind? How did I miss the signs, or worse, ignore them? I felt small, smaller than I ever had before. I'd catch myself comparing who I was to the guy I imagined she'd been with. What did he have that I didn't? Was it money, looks, something else? Every comparison made me feel worse, like I was stuck in a pit I couldn't climb out of. And the hardest part? I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed. I had failed in my marriage, in protecting what we had. It didn't matter how much she apologized, how many times she said it wasn't my fault. In my mind, I couldn't let go of the idea that if I'd been more, just more, it wouldn't have happened. I didn't just lose my wife that night. I lost a part of myself. The days after the confrontation were a blur. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, unable to make sense of anything. The weight of what happened hung over me like a dark cloud, and every time I looked at Lisa, the same question kept running through my mind. Should I stay or leave? It wasn't an easy decision. I wanted to believe that we could fix it, that maybe somehow we could go back to what we had before, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The trust was gone. Every time she'd walk into the room, I'd feel that pang of doubt, that sharp sting of betrayal that wouldn't let me see her the same way. But then there were the memories, all the years we'd spent together, the good times, the times when I believed we had something real, something worth holding on to. How could I just walk away from that? Wasn't marriage about sticking it out through the tough times? Isn't that what I promised to do? And yet, every time I thought about staying, something inside me screamed that it was wrong, that if I stayed, I'd never really trust her again. I'd always wonder where she was, who she was with. I'd question every little thing. And that wasn't the kind of life I wanted. It wasn't the kind of life I deserved. But leaving felt like a failure, like I was giving up on everything we built together. It felt like admitting that the life we dreamed of was over. And that scared me. It terrified me, actually. I didn't know if I was ready to be alone, to start over at this point in my life. Friends told me I should leave. Some said I'd never be able to truly forgive her. And even if I tried, the relationship would be tainted forever. But others said I should think it over, that maybe this was a rough patch we could work through. Everyone had advice, but none of it made the decision any easier. And Lisa, she was trying. I could see that. She was remorseful, apologizing over and over again, telling me she'd end it with him, that she wanted to make things right. She said we could rebuild, that we could go to therapy, start fresh. But how could we start fresh when everything between us was broken? I went back and forth in my head 1,000 times. 1 minute, I was ready to pack my things and leave, to walk out the door and never look back. The next, I'd talk myself into staying, convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, we could make it work. It was like I was caught in this endless loop of conflict, torn between two impossible choices. And no matter which way I leaned, the answer never felt clear. I didn't know what to do, so I did what anyone would in my situation. I reached out to the people closest to me. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who could make sense of this mess. But even that wasn't easy. How do you tell people that your wife cheated on you, that the life you've been building is falling apart? The first person I called was my brother. He's always been the one I could count on, the one who's been through his own share of rough patches. I figured he'd know what to say, but even as I explained the situation, I could hear the shock in his voice. "John, man, I don't know what to tell you," he said. "I mean, if she cheated, you can't trust her anymore, right? How do you come back from that?" That was the first response I got. Leave her. Cut your losses, move on. And a part of me wanted to. A big part. But I couldn't shake the other side. The memories, the years we'd spent together, the promises we made. I called a couple of close friends next. One of them told me to give it time, to think about it more carefully. "People make mistakes," he said. "It's about whether she's willing to fix it, whether you're willing to try." His words were calming, but they also added to the confusion. Was I willing to try? Did I even want to? Then there was my mum. When I told her what happened, she was quiet at first, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment. "John," she finally said, "I never thought this would happen to you too. But you need to do what's best for you. If that means leaving, then that's what you have to do. But if you think you can work it out, don't let pride stop you." Everyone had their opinions. Everyone had their advice. And with each conversation, I felt like I was being pulled in different directions. Some people were telling me to walk away, while others were saying I should try to save what we had. And none of them had to live with the consequences. That was all on me. The more I talked, the less clear things became. It was like opening a new door of conflict with each call I made. I was looking for answers, but all I found was more questions. After all the conversations, after all the sleepless nights, and endless back and forth in my head, something inside me just shifted. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and everything was fine. But slowly, day by day, I started to realize something. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let this destroy who I was. It wasn't easy. Every morning, I'd wake up and feel that weight in my chest, that ache in the pit of my stomach, reminding me of what happened. But I knew I couldn't keep living like that. I had to take control of my own healing. Even if I didn't have all the answers yet, I had to start moving forward, one small step at a time. The first thing I did was focus on myself. I know it sounds cliché, but I had to stop thinking about Lisa and the betrayal for a moment and start thinking about me, about what I needed to do to get my life back on track. I started working out more, going for runs to clear my head. It wasn't about getting in shape as much as it was about feeling in control of something, even if it was just my body. Then I started setting small goals for myself. Little things that had nothing to do with the marriage or the affair. I threw myself into my work, started taking on new projects. I focused on things that made me feel productive, things that reminded me I still had value outside of this mess. It wasn't easy, but with each little win, I started feeling stronger. I also spent more time with friends, not talking about the situation, but just being around people who made me feel like me again. People who reminded me of who I was before all of this. I began to realize that I wasn't just the guy whose wife cheated. I was still John, and I was still worth something. It was like I had to rebuild myself, piece by piece, from the ground up. I wasn't healed yet, not by a long shot, but for the first time in a while, I felt like I was on the path to becoming whole again. Like maybe, just maybe, I could get through this and come out stronger on the other side. It wasn't something I planned, meeting someone new. Honestly, after everything that happened, I wasn't sure if I even could trust someone again. The idea of opening up, of putting myself in a position where I could get hurt again, it scared me more than I wanted to admit. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Her name was Emily. We met through mutual friends at a small get-together. At first, I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to enjoy being around people who didn't know the whole story, who didn't look at me like the guy who'd been cheated on. Emily wasn't flashy or overwhelming. She was just real, the kind of person who was easy to talk to, who made you feel comfortable without trying too hard. We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. We didn't dive into anything heavy. In fact, we kept it light. But there was something about her, something calm and steady that drew me in. She didn't pry into my past, didn't push me to share more than I was ready to. She just listened. And in a way, that's what I needed most. For weeks, we kept things casual. I wasn't ready to dive into anything serious. My trust was still shattered from everything with Lisa. And even though I knew Emily wasn't her, it was hard to shake that fear. But Emily seemed to understand. She never rushed me, never made me feel like I had to be more than I was ready to be. Slowly, I found myself opening up to her. Little by little, I shared parts of my story, how my marriage fell apart, the betrayal, the hurt. I expected her to pull away, to see me as damaged, but she didn't. She just listened, nodding thoughtfully, never judging. And in those moments, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. Trust didn't come easily, though. Every time we got close, there was a part of me that held back, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd wonder if she was really who she seemed to be, or if, like Lisa, there was something hidden beneath the surface. It was hard to silence that voice, the one that kept saying, "Don't get too comfortable. Don't let yourself get hurt again." But Emily was patient. She didn't push, didn't pressure. She let me come to terms with my own fears at my own pace. And slowly, with each passing day, I felt myself letting go of the past. Just a little. I realized that not every person is the same. That maybe, just maybe, there are people out there who are worth trusting. It wasn't easy, but with Emily, it felt possible. I wasn't ready to jump headfirst into something new, but for the first time since the affair, I felt like I could imagine a future again. A future where trust wasn't just a broken promise, but something I could rebuild, one small step at a time. I never thought I'd get here. After everything with Lisa, I honestly didn't think I'd ever feel whole again. But life has a funny way of moving forward, whether you're ready or not. And somewhere along the way, as I let go of the past, I found myself moving forward too. Emily, she changed everything. What started as casual conversations, as a cautious friendship, turned into something more, something real. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't some grand revelation. It was just a slow, steady realization that I could be happy again, that I deserved to be happy again. With Emily, things were different. There was no hiding, no pretending. She knew my past, and I knew hers. We were honest with each other in a way I hadn't been with anyone in a long time. And it felt good. No, it felt right. I didn't have to pretend to be something I wasn't. I could be the man who had been broken and who was still learning to heal, and she accepted that. She accepted me. I started to trust again, slowly, piece by piece. And with that trust came something I didn't expect. Peace. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I wasn't consumed by doubt or fear. I realized that not every relationship was doomed to end like my marriage. Some things, some people, are worth taking a chance on. And so, I took that chance. I let myself love again. Emily wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but that's what made it work. We were two people, both with our own baggage, trying to build something better, something stronger. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a future to look forward to. A future where love didn't mean pain, where happiness wasn't just a fleeting dream. Looking back, I realize now that what happened with Lisa, while devastating, wasn't the end. It was a turning point. A painful, messy turning point that forced me to confront parts of myself I hadn't wanted to see. But it also led me to something better, something I didn't even know I was looking for. I found love again. Not the same kind of love I had before. This was different. This was love built on trust, on understanding, on real connection. And it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that's all I ever wanted. Happiness doesn't come in a neat, tidy package. It's complicated, it's messy, but it's worth fighting for. And as I sit here now, with Emily by my side, I know that all the pain, all the heartbreak was just part of the journey, a journey that brought me to this moment, to this life that I never thought I'd have again. And I'm grateful for it, all of it.